seeking advice, toxic parents. I grew up in Eastern Europe as an only child in a really poor area. My family struggled with money most of the time, even though my parents were working a lot. They did really care about me, and I can't really say they treated me bad at all when I was little. When I became a teen, I had less and less personal space/privacy. They came to my room without knocking. When I got a girlfriend, they called her every name you can imagine. Sometimes they argued a lot and loud. My dad always drank a beer after work, nothing really bad itself. However, when he was in bad mood, he started to drink more and more. The arguments became more frequent and louder. It never escalated to physical contact between them. My dad's parents both committed elimination, his dad when he was 14 and his mom when I began first grade. Sometimes when my dad was really drunk, he threatened to off himself the same way his parents did. I had a share of being a stupid teenager, but nothing extreme. I was never in jail, prison. At 15 years old, I started to have anxiety/panic attacks. It made me miserable, and I struggled with school and life itself. I thought I will die very, very young. I went to a psychiatrist for years, and I got Haribo and antidepressants. After a while, I did not take more antidepressants and I got Klonopin. I developed an addiction towards it, and I was on it for 3 years and abused it frequently because I could not tolerate life. I had day-lasting panic attacks and I overdosed twice. One time I could not move a centimeter and drool everywhere, and the other time my heart stopped for a really short amount of time. In the middle of COVID at the age of 19, my dad got a job offer from Scandinavia by a friend, and soon after me and my mom followed. 3 days after my arrival, I already worked in the same company as my dad. I completely quit pills. We had $800 rent, and I covered it fully 90% of the time. Bills were included. I didn't have to worry about food and appliances, etc. That was our agreement, and I went in. After I paid my things, they always tried to check how much money I have myself. What do I spend on the rest? Checking my account, etc. Judging if I spent on something I wanted to, but they don't agree with, eating out, because food is cheaper if we make it home. After a while, we made an agreement that I put $1,000 in savings so I don't spend it, and pay the rent every month. Every month I spent like $200 to $300 on myself at that point. After a while, I was questioned, why can't I put that money in the savings too? This drove me crazy, and I started to gamble online to have more money to spend on myself, and also developed an addiction, lasted about 2 years. I wanted something more and got a business loan and started dropshipping. Did not turn out well, and now I have debt. I still never touched their money. The worst I did was loaning from them a few $100 for like emergency dentist, etc., and I always paid them back. After a while, the company drove itself to bankruptcy by the employer, and we got out of work. We started to be on social support and filed a claim on court because our employer also didn't pay a good amount of money. I have to mention that I did and do everything that is official, papers, etc. They do not speak English or the local language. We are still on social support. It is enough for everything we have, but not more. I did learn the local language in the meantime, and I got to know a very sweet woman who lives in another city. They did not welcome that. She is older than me with 8 years and has autism, but the type that you could never tell. She does not require any type of assistance, has her own apartment, work, and the most autistic thing she does is putting a beanie on inside. She is the kindest person you ever met and always try to uplift me. She lives in the capital, and whenever I tried to see her, they argued with me. About the costs of going, about leaving them. We live in a small city, and there is barely any jobs open. I could easily get a job if I would move to her, but my parents don't let me. They say if I do, I am abandoning them, and they will have to leave, because they can't get anything done due to language problems. I said I would still cover their rent, and it is still a no. They drink a lot nowadays, argue more than ever, come in my room and scream random, cry, don't respect my peace and alone time. They call me names, how ungrateful I am, etc., and after that they tell me they only want good for me, and how I am not ready to move out. While I know I would be happier if I go, I have insane guilt knowing I leave them here because they really just can't get anything done. Now to the next story, story 2. My 30F boyfriend, 33M, is always sulking and depressed. I've been with my boyfriend for 5 years, and we have lived together for 4.5 of these years. During this time, my boyfriend was diagnosed with ADHD and previously anxiety. He is now medicated for both. We have had many issues around him helping me around the house, which he blamed his ADHD on. It also doesn't help his mother has babies him his whole life, and he never learned household skills. This has only improved within the last 6 months, but also really impacted my attraction to him. He also never paid attention to me as he has a gaming addiction. We haven't had sex in 2 years as I felt like his caregiver. Recently, he has had a really bad time at work and is burnt out. But I feel like he is taking his anger/depression/anxiety/whatever it is out on me. He comes home from work in a mood, sits outside for 30 minutes to an hour vaping, and then comes inside and sulks about how I don't show him any affection or love. I always explain that his lack of help around the house and effort in our relationship, he doesn't take me out on dates or buy me flowers or anything romantic, has really impacted me wanting to have sex with him. I tell him I show him love in other ways like making him his favorite meals, reminding him of appointments, buying him things I think he'd like, doing things to make his life easier, etc., and he still sulks. I also still kiss him, cuddle him, and hold his hand. He had a bad day at work the other day and came home and ignored me completely, and when I asked what's wrong, he told me he isn't happy with our relationship. But then he went on to say how his boss yelled at him and has unrealistic expectations. I told him he should look for a new job and showed him roles available. I also encouraged him to speak to a therapist. There's been a few nights where he has come to bed and sulked because I've already been asleep and he's wanted to kiss. We sleep with separate blankets because otherwise he hogs them, and he was sulking about how not normal this is. I always feel like whenever he's around, he's sucking the happiness out of me because he's always so miserable. We could have a good day out and come home and he'll be sulking and in a mood. I had to let go of holding his hand for a second. He came to bed last night and the blanket was exposing his back, and I said, "Aren't you cold?" and fixed it for him, and he said yes in a sulky tone because I was asleep when he came into bed. It was 12 a.m. and he'd been gaming all night. I don't know what to do, or if it's worth waiting around for things to improve. I genuinely feel like I always have to walk on eggshells around him cause he is always sulking about something. This has only started since the beginning of this year.